I remember 10 years ago, I was in South Africa speaking to a group of about 6,000 university students in Cape Town. And the University of Cape Town is one of Africa's leading universities, and one of the universities that produces more leaders in that nation, I think, than any other African university. And I was sharing the platform with a professor by the name of David Block. Now, David Block, without any question, is the most eccentric academic I have ever met. And that's saying something, because I live in Oxford, and we have a lot of eccentrics there. He started off his presentation by having a big slide behind him. There was a giant screen, maybe 2 or 3 times bigger than the screens you see on my left and my right. It was enormous. And he had flown first class on the seat next to him a huge projector. That this projector was designed to show film slides taken with this enormous telescope. One of the most powerful cameras at that time in the world. And he put a slide behind him taken with this telescopic camera. And it was just a picture of stars. And he said, "Do you see the stars on the screen behind you?" He said, "Do you know how many there are on this one slide?" He said, "If you were to count the stars on this one slide at the rate of 1 star per second, it would take you 2,800 years to count them all." Now, that's a lot of stars. Then he put up another slide. And he said, "Do you see this slide?" And there you could see this big pillar of dust. It was an incredible sight. He said, "This is my area of research speciality, cosmic dust." And there's this huge dust pillar of all these different colors. He says, "Do you know how big this pillar of dust is?" And there was this pillar of dust maybe 40 foot high on the screen behind him. And he walked up to the screen, and there was a little wisp of dust breaking away from this big pillar. And he put his hand like this. He said, "You see the distance from here to here?" He said, "That is the distance across our own galaxy." Now that gives you an idea about how big this thing is. Then he put up another slide. It looked like the first slide. Lots of little stars. And he said, "Do you see this slide?" He said, "What you are looking at here are not individual stars. Each one of these pricks of light is a galaxy system." And then he put up his fourth slide, a giant square, just a blank square, 40 feet by 40 feet. You probably use meters here. I'm trying to think how big that is in meters. That must be what, about 12.5 meters by 12.5 meters. And it was blank. And then he asked this question. He said, "Suppose I were to ask you to take a pen and draw yourself in this square, and I asked you, draw yourself in proportion to the universe. How significant are you in relation to the size of the universe?" Have you ever felt very small? I remember listening to this, thinking to myself, I have to preach after this, and we're going to need counselors at the front of the stadium, counseling all these people who I was feeling insignificant. He said, if you took a pin and you put a little prick into the middle of this square, he said, you would feel that you are overstating the size of your existence and the significance of your existence in relationship to the universe, wouldn't you? And that's exactly how I felt. Then he continued with his presentation, and he said that all human beings are carbon-based life forms. Now, I know this is true because I've seen Star Trek. You and I are made of carbon. It's an essential element that makes us who we are. He says, and therefore, human life as we understand it couldn't exist without carbon. But carbon can only exist in a universe where various forces are held in equilibrium. And he then proceeded to do something that I've never seen any preacher do before. He recited from memory the mathematical equations for the formations of black holes. It took about 35 seconds, and when he finished, he said, and that's just one of the short ones. We have much bigger ones than that to deal with other aspects of it. And he talked about strong and weak magnetic forces and strong and weak gravitational forces and nuclear forces and so on. And then he said, look, these forces have to be in a certain equilibrium in this universe before carbon can be created. He says the universe we observe is the size it needs to be in order to permit the existence of carbon. We shouldn't be surprised to observe a universe so big because we couldn't possibly exist in a universe that was any significantly smaller. In other words, the universe is the size it needs to be, he said, in order to permit the existence of just one carbon-based life form. And I remember hearing that thinking, I'm so glad we're not alone. The universe is the size it needs to be in order to allow you to exist. Maybe we are not here by accident. Maybe we are here by design. Maybe there is a designer who has fashioned it to make it possible for you and I to be here. And if that is the case, then it means that you are not here by simple chance. There is something bigger.